Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the ancient book of Deuteronomy, and we're going to unpack how it designed a national identity that was actually built to last. It's like a technology for collective memory.
So let's jump right in. How do you build an identity that can survive for thousands of years? We're starting with a group of people, former slaves, standing on the edge of a new home. But they're facing this massive problem. How do you keep everyone united, focused on a single shared story for generations and generations to come?
The Israelites were about to enter their new homeland. Sounds great, right? But the land itself, the very geography, was a huge challenge to their unity. You could almost say it was a landscape designed to pull people apart. Just look at this. The land they were entering, it wasn't some unified, easy-to-govern place, like the big river valleys in Egypt or Mesopotamia. No, this place was rugged. It was mountainous. It was really diverse. Someone living on the coast would have a totally different life than a farmer up in the hills. The landscape itself just naturally creates these little isolated pockets. And, by the way, it was already home to 7 different nations who hadn't managed to unify. So, how on earth do you forge a single people against those kinds of odds? Well, the answer is pretty amazing. It lies in a sophisticated kind of technology, a technology of memory. So, what's the first step in building this collective memory? You take your foundational laws, your core rules, and you reframe them. You turn a universal rule into your own unique personal story.
Okay, this is so interesting. Look at this shift in the reason for the Sabbath. In the earlier book of Exodus, the command is cosmic, it's universal. You rest because God rested after creating the whole world. But here in Deuteronomy, the reason gets personal, it becomes historical, and it becomes ethical. You rest because you were once slaves in Egypt with no rest, and God set you free. See what that does? It grounds the law in their shared specific experience of suffering and liberation.
And this just brilliantly gets to the heart of their covenant law. It says that while breaking the rules might have consequences for a few generations, God's persistent, loyal love, his hesed, that endures for thousands of generations. This isn't just some fleeting feeling. It's this deep, unbreakable faithfulness that really forms the bedrock of their entire identity and their relationship with God.
So, you've got this core story, but how do you make these huge ideas actually part of everyday life? Well, Deuteronomy lays out this incredibly practical, almost physical system for embedding these beliefs into the very fabric of society. It all kicks off with the Shema. This is it. The central, non-negotiable creed. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. It's this powerful declaration of monotheism. There is one God, and, this is key, he is their God. This is the truth that everything else is built on. And then the text tells them to place these words in what are called liminal spaces. You know, the thresholds, the in-between places. It is a genius system. It moves the law from the most internal space, your own heart, outward to your hands, what you do, between your eyes, how you see the world, onto your doorposts, your private home, and finally out to the city gates, your public community life. Every single transition you make throughout your day becomes a reminder of who you are. But here's the twist. The greatest test of this entire memory system, it wasn't going to be hardship. It was going to be success. The real danger wasn't scarcity, it was the sheer abundance of the promised land. So we have to understand the difference here between remembering and forgetting. In this context, to remember, the Hebrew word is zakar, means to actively pull your history into the present moment. And to forget? Well, that isn't like misplacing your keys. It's a deliberate choice. It's an abandonment of the story of who you are and how you got here. Just think about their last 40 years. Out in the wilderness, their dependence on God was obvious. It was total. He provided manna when there was zero food, and the text even says their clothes and shoes miraculously didn't wear out. I mean, survival itself was a daily reminder that they had to rely on him for everything. But this new land, it's a whole different world. When Deuteronomy describes it, the list of products it gives isn't some random fantasy. It actually matches the region's agricultural calendar perfectly, from the spring barley harvest all the way to the autumn olive harvest. It's describing a world of predictable, reliable abundance. And that's the trap. Deuteronomy chapter 8 warns that this very prosperity is the biggest threat. Because when the harvests are reliable and the work of your hands brings you wealth, it is so easy to start thinking you did it all yourself. You get self-reliant, and you forget that God is the ultimate source of that success. forgetting becomes a very real danger. Now, this whole framework for memory and identity, it became so foundational, so deeply embedded, that it echoes centuries and centuries later in a really pivotal story in the New Testament. And check this out. Fast forward all those years. When Jesus is tested out in the wilderness for 40 days, his very identity is being challenged. And what does he do? His three responses are all direct quotes from, you guessed it, Deuteronomy, chapter 6 and 8, the exact sections we've just been talking about, the ones about remembering who God is, depending on him, and holding on to your identity. He literally uses Deuteronomy's blueprint to pass his own test. So you see, this technology of memory from Deuteronomy wasn't just for some ancient nation. It presents this timeless idea that the stories we choose to remember, the ones we repeat, they are actively shaping our values, our actions, and our future. And that leaves all of us with a pretty critical question to think about for ourselves.